help us keep it going. Every listen, like, and subscription to The Unfolding presented by the Loveland Foundation helps us do more than just share powerful stories. It helps fund real therapy sessions for Black women and girls across the country. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a podcast, you're helping us show funders that this work matters, that this community is growing, and our mental health support deserves real investment. So if you've been moved by what you've heard, take a second, like, subscribe, and share. It is a small gesture that can make a generational impact. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Unfolding presented by the Loveland Foundation. I'm your host, Rachel Keener, and today is our last episode of 2025. Wow, I cannot believe it, but I am so excited because we are joined by the incredible Dr. Charmain Jackman, who is the CEO and founder of Innopsych and also author of a new book, The Black Therapist's Guide to Private Practice and Entrepreneurship. Welcome, Dr. Charmain.
Yay! Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that intro, Rachel. Really excited to be here. Love the work that you're doing and feel really honored.
The pleasure is truly all mine. I'm so excited. In our intro calls, I was like, oh, she's such a breath of fresh air. I was so excited to talk to you and just absorb your knowledge and your just presence. It is so beautiful. So yeah, just to give a little bit of an origin story. So you begin with the realization of finding a therapist who looked like you wasn't easy. I know a lot of people who come to Loveland Foundation have that same experience with finding a therapist. It's I just want someone who looks like me, someone I feel seen by, who I don't have to do explaining of my background, my culture to, and just understands what it's like to be in a Black or brown body, just trying to navigate, just trying to survive, And so can you take us back to the time how Innopsych began and what planted that seed?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you a little ways back because I think the origin story is really important and unexpected in many ways. So I grew up on this very small island called Barbados, and very early on, I knew, probably around 14 or 15, I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist, even though I had never met one in real life. There was a TV inspiration.
What show?
I'm aging myself here. You may or may not have heard of it. It's called The Bob Newhart Show.
I haven't heard of it.
I knew she was going. I knew it was going to happen. So
I was curious.
White guy who lived in New England with his wife. They had a bed and breakfast, and he was a psychologist. I know. Oh. And go figure, end up in New England.
You sound like my dream of reality.
All right. But I knew, I just knew, and now that I have more presence, I really believe it's a gift from God. And so, but throughout my career, so that was kind of the seed. And then throughout my career, I, was always in spaces where when I would come out and introduce my clients as their therapist, people would just light up. There'd be some smiles and joy. I remember one woman in particular, she was just so joyful. She's like, "You're going to be my therapist?" And it just reminded me that if this was unexpected to have someone in my skin, to have a Black woman be that therapist in spaces, even at places like Mississippi, right? It was not expected. And so it really just reminded me that I was on the right path, but also that having a therapist of color was not something that was going to be a given. And, all my career, I've worked in communities of color at a high school in Boston, at a juvenile court, always facing young people of color who were often, I was often one or the only or one of a few clinicians of color in those spaces. And so it always reminded me that this is why I'm here. And fast forward to 2017, my husband and I had been married for over 10 years or so, and we were having some challenges and really wanted to meet with a therapist to work some things out. And we had the hardest time. We wanted people of color. I wanted a woman of color. He wanted a man of color. We wanted a couples therapist of color. And we had the hardest time. And I'm talking about putting in a search saying, I want to work with a Black woman, African-American, Caribbean, whatever. Give us someone. And then what would come out would not be that. It would be the opposite. It would be some white person. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so it really just highlighted, for me, it was you put in the search, you're not getting what you want. And then it literally took us over 6 months to get connected with a therapist. And then that person was not white. It ended up being a good fit, but it just highlighted like how much of a struggle and what the search process was like at that time. And so I was like, this is something I can do. I want
Mhm.
to tackle this issue. At that point, I had been in the field for over 15 years. I'm like, this is definitely something I want to fix. So that's kind of how it started. The mission was to shift negative narratives about therapy in people of color and to make that process faster and easier. So that's the
Yeah.
mission that we continue to be on as a company.
No, Innopsych is truly like reimagining what therapy looks like and how therapy could be accessible for so many people. And that's so similar to what our goal is at the Loveland Foundation, is just to like make mental health accessible to all. Like that is what we want to do. Like it's not a luxury to be mentally well, and like having that representation in your therapist is like so important, because this idea of like I truly feel seen, like the joy you're describing from the person who's like, I can't believe you're my therapist. Like that's so much of like what we strive for, is creating that joy of like you have someone who understands where you're coming from and what you need to heal in order to heal. So like thank you for seeing that need and meeting that need by creating a psych. And just yeah, I guess like as you're changing the face and feel of therapy, like what does that look like in action? Like how have you seen it shift since you started the work?
Yeah, so, I love talking about my journey. I work with a lot of therapists on entrepreneurship, and being a full-time entrepreneur, I love it, and it's also humbling at the same time.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
while right? So while like our mission is still the same, but how we execute that has shifted over time. And I think that requires you as an entrepreneur to be flexible, to be able to see other opportunities that evolve and that might come into play, notice trends that are happening in the environment. So when we started in, so we, I started the company in 2019 with a small
Mm,
grant, a Citizens Bank, and then we launched with our signature product, which is our Therapist of Color Directory in 2020, January 2020. And soon
mhm.
thereafter, there was this thing called a pandemic.
Oh yeah.
And so, right, that thing we're still dealing with. But it actually positioned us to really be able to execute on our mission and a business model that I had not anticipated. While I knew I was going to be working with community organizations around education, because that was a big piece of it. Companies reached out to us to help their employees navigate some of the stresses, to teach well-being strategies. And so I was like, oh my goodness, this is really cool. I had never imagined this in this form. And then after some of the racial reckoning with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and some of the other named people that we know were murdered during this time, there was a racial reckoning that became another niche that we were able to kind of slide into. So today, 5 years later, 6 years later since launching, we continue with our mission about making mental health resources accessible and shifting that narrative. A lot of it now is actually working directly with organizations, providing well-being programming for their employees. I like to say, I like to bring mental health into the nooks and crannies where you will never imagine mental health resources or conversations might happen. So I do that in a lot of different ways. So some of it is traditional corporate organizations. We do a lot of work with arts institutions here locally. So we provide support for their visiting artists who are coming in from out of town. We provide short-term therapy. We create audience resources for all of their productions. So I think that's really cool, and it stems from some of the work that I did in arts institutions. Um, what else do we do? We do a lot of training for therapists. I love being a therapist. I really love being a therapist,
Mhm.
and I want therapists to be able to generate livable incomes and to be able to create practices and businesses that help them thrive and that they can thrive and that are profitable. and doesn't rely on them being in the office all the time. So I wrote a book called The Black Therapist's Guide to Private Practice and Entrepreneurship, as you mentioned. And I do a lot of coaching around therapists, around business, but also their sustainability as clinicians in this field, which, as you can imagine, has high rates of burnout. So those are some
High
of the
rates of
major things that we do. Yeah. But I'm always open to new things.
So happy you talked about that because that's a main reason I'm so excited to have you on here is because part of the work we do at the foundation, yes, we provide therapy and access to mental health for our clients and cohort, but another thing is supporting our healers and our therapists because everyone's coming to you guys to solve things and like help things and heal things, but healing our healers is such a like a pivotal
Mhm.
piece of the work we're doing because the burnout's real. And especially now where we're seeing over 400,000 Black women losing their jobs. We're entering like this era where benefits are being removed and it's a scary and devastating time for so many people. And just having this place where you have like a guide and a framework to support Black therapists as they navigate, like you said, like starting their own private practice and being entrepreneurs, like there's obstacles that come with that as well. So I want to get into your head a little bit about like what inspired you to write this book and the conversations you were hoping to spark and like what your impact was with this book.
Yeah. I mentioned like going back, wanting to be a psychologist. And I knew as a kid, I was like, I'm going to have my own business, right? Like my 14-year-old self was going to be a businesswoman and a
Mhm.
psychologist, right? And going through the journey of graduate school, it's slowly like I remember distinctly leaving grad school and thinking, I don't want to have a private practice. It's too hard. It's not for me. So that was like, I had convinced myself that I could not be in business. And a couple years later, encountered a couple therapists who were white who had their own businesses. And I'm like, wait a minute, how you do that?
I don't get it. Exactly, I could do it.
So they generously shared their process. And I'm like, oh, it wasn't that I couldn't do it or that I didn't want to do it. It was that I didn't know how to do it. And so
Mm,
I realized that graduate school never addressed business in any way. There were minuscule conversations that some of my professors talked about. They had some of them had practices, but nobody talked about how to monetize your expertise, right? And
mhm.
in fact, I felt almost discouraged. There was like, particularly at the time I was in school, this was some 25 years ago now, but they were like, insurance and Medicare and all these things, it's going to be hard. It's not going to really be, this opportunity for psychologists to be in practice. So I feel like in some ways I was even like just, directed away from this. Now I understand it's part of the system of keeping people of color, therapists of color out of business because they need us on the front lines,
Mhm.
right? So it
Yep.
is a little bit by design. So once I figured that out, once I did the math, I was like, oh, I see what y'all trying to do.
Mhm.
No. So I've been doing some coaching with clinicians about how to start their practices. I did that for probably about 5 years. And then I was approached by a publisher to put something in writing. And I'm like, you know what? This is something that I would love to share with other therapists around the world because my model was not going to get to everybody. So that was kind of the spark. People are receiving it well. I have dumped just about everything in my head and I wanted to like really document. I'll be able to pick up the book, see in the background and go chapter by chapter and be able to design and create your blueprint for your profitable practice.
No, it truly is a guide, and I think that's what, like you said, is not taught in grad school. If anything, you're taught to shy away from private practice for that same thinking, like it's too hard, or leave for someone else to do it, or you don't have enough resources. And so, one thing I've noticed, and I really admire and respect about you, is if you see a problem, you face it head on and you take action. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that you do. But in a way, and I've we're gonna get into this, but you do it in a way with such joy and without like and like kinda like this like air of protection over your peace to prevent burnout. Because based on my research with you, I noticed that you've had firsthand experience with like burnout to the point where it's almost cost you your life. And
Mhm.
so this idea, and like so many people are burning themselves out without even realizing it or just feeling like they have to keep going because who else is going to do it? Who else can like take care of this? But like this idea of like you really got to take care of yourself in order to take care of others, but like really just like for the sake of just living a life of fullness and like being present. So, yeah, what's been your experience with burnout and like this emotional journey of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I have to say it come by honestly. My mom was this hard. She was this entrepreneur in Barbados. She quit her job, was selling Avon and some other things, but she was
Always Avon.
successful at it. She was able to like move us from subsidized housing into this very affluent neighborhood where she bought land and built her house from scratch. But she worked her butt off, right? And so she didn't sleep, but she enjoyed what she was doing. And so I definitely know that I come by that honestly, like that hard work. And creating, like creating things, creating nothing, something out of nothing.
Mhm. Make it work.
And then I think adding like those messages we get about being Black in the workplace, right? You're going to have to work twice as hard, right? To prove that you know what you know. And so I think all of those messages, there's a bit of perfectionism, might be surprised. So
Mhm.
that might surprise you.
Awkward.
A tad bit of perfectionism.
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
all of those
How we work
things,
through that.
right? All of those things really like push me. I'm a very self-driven person. And so you then translate that into a system that is about taking and exploitation. Of course, I'm going to end up burnout. Of course, many of us end up
Yeah.
burnout, right? Because we give. That's what we start to push, grind, hustle, all of those
Mhm.
messages. But when you get in an environment that doesn't take care of you, that only takes from you, that doesn't say,
Yeah.
hey, Charmaine, take a break, take that extra weekend. Like you're doing too much, girl. No, they're like, keep giving, keep giving, keep giving. And
What
so,
else can you give? Dig
you know,
deeper.
yeah, so that ended up, so I would say what happened, I had my first child. I was working a 9 to 5. I had a private practice, um, and a newborn. And
Wow.
I didn't really change how I was working, right? I was kind of trying to still do it all. And that was a recipe for disaster. I ended up
Wow.
in the ER. My aunt was dying from cancer and
Mm.
told me to check her blood pressure, got mine checked, and they were like, you need to go to the ER now. My blood pressure was double, like it was in danger zone. They were like, this is not okay. You're like, you got to go to the ER.
Oh, that's so
And I
scary.
literally had an 11-month
So
old.
you were pregnant at the time? Oh.
This one, you're jumping ahead there.
Oh.
This one, my child, was I pregnant? No, I wasn't pregnant then. But my child was 11 months.
Wow.
And yeah. And it was a sad time because my beloved aunt was dying. And that was really hard. I think
Mm.
that didn't help at all. So from that moment I had to start taking blood pressure medication. And then 14 months later, I was pregnant with my second child. I had
Mhm.
moved into a leadership role at the job I had been at for many years. It Yes, it changed employers, but still the same work site. But now I was a
Yeah.
woman in leadership. I was a Black woman in leadership. And so people had to respond to me differently. And some people didn't like that. And the funny,
Mhm.
because at the moment I didn't really realize like this was impacting me, but it was a stressor. And so I was a year into that job, pregnant with my second child, went for routine visit to my OB just to check up. And she was like, you gotta, you have to go to the ER. Your blood pressure is too high. We can't control it. And it's potentially deadly for you and or the baby. And so my
Oh,
second
mm.
visit to the ER in less, in like a year time span because
Yeah.
of my high blood pressure. So, um, now we know about Black maternal health and all those kind of risk factors that we weren't talking about back then. So that was my second kind of wake up call, connection to burnout. Just, again, working hard, like not shift, I'm pregnant, but I'm still trying to do all the things with a toddler and a new, I'm being pregnant. So I just, I share my story because I'm getting kind of emotional because we put so much pressure on ourselves in an environment that doesn't take care of us. And I'm
Mm,
really, really about reminding women or making women aware, particularly women of color, that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to like set the limits. We have to put the boundaries in place, regardless of what they think. Um,
mm.
because otherwise, too much of us leave this earth way too early.
Oh, yes. Yes. No, I thank you so much for sharing. It's such a privilege to know your story and learn from it because that burnout that you speak of where it's so insidious that you don't know it's happening until oftentimes it's too late or it gets to a point of like your life is at risk, your child's life is at risk if you don't like take care of yourself in this way. You're just like, "Oh, like, I just have been doing more and more because I just thought that's what's been expected, or that's how I get things done, or that level of perfection that we strive for." Which again, like, is there's so many layers into, like, why it's so important to have people who see you and people who could call you out and help you and guide you, and so you creating this book that's guiding people, because I know you don't like you say, you break it down chapter by chapter, and it's not just about entrepreneurship, but it's also about protecting your well-being, protecting yourself, and,
Yeah.
like, while doing something that you may have never done before, and there's so
Yeah.
many tools in this, like, this material that you have shared with people so that they don't have to, like, wait for that, like, wake-up call where it's, like, life or death, because it shouldn't have to get to that point. It should be, like,
Yeah.
here's how you just lead a bit more easeful life, and, like, that
Yeah.
set that priority of just, like, because healing and, like, yeah, is so beautiful. Like, yeah, we're healed, we're taking care of ourselves, like, but how? Tell me how. How do you do it? And you're like, "Here's a book. Here's how you do it." Like, I'm breaking it down
Right.
chapter by chapter for you. So you talk a lot about survival versus thrival in your book, and I think that concept is so spot on with how it feels, especially in today, is like we are just like trying to survive. And like that's just not really living. That's not really enjoying life. That's not really using our time to the best. So how does survival versus thrival apply in your book and then how does it apply into your day-to-day life?
Yeah. So, I think in case we didn't know, so this is the book we are talking about. There's a whole chapter on well-being for entrepreneurs, which is another piece like I didn't know about getting into this piece. So I really wanted to highlight that in the book. But I really talk about the survival businesses versus thriving businesses.
Mm,
And many of us, I think, probably like 99% of therapists get into business. They are either going to do a group practice or a private practice, right? And the challenge with that is, particularly if you do a traditional practice, you only make money when you're on, right? And I call that on the hour for the dollar. So
mm,
you only make money if you are seeing a client. And you can't grow in that way. You can't expand your business. You can't grow your income, right? Unless you're charging people more money, right? But it still really puts a container on how fast or how much you can grow. So
mm,
I talk about that as a survival practice. So your only income when you're on. You're not really taking care of your business, your bookkeeping, your things like that. Like you're just like doing the basics. And sometimes the world is falling apart around you, but you're seeing your clients,
mm,
right? We can't grow, we can't profit in that way. So the thriving business is where you have multiple streams of income. You may have a private practice, you might be consulting, you may have books, passive income streams, which I really emphasize, or offerings that provide a higher income. And a lot of that I've found working in corporate settings, working with organizations, that B2B business is really helpful. that's ways that you can thrive. You can be profitable. You can expand your team, right? Those are ways that you can grow and have a legacy in your business. But if you're on all the time, you're going to be burnt out. You're going to be just as stressed out if you were working for somebody. And so really this book is also guiding people to really think about how do you leverage all the different wisdom and expertise that you have so that you're not only doing therapy, but you can also using your other gifts for other ways that you can bring revenue into the business.
You know, you spent so much of your career just helping others heal and build and, like, create, like, their own ways of creating income and, like, type of living for them. So, now that you're in this season of your life, like, what's something you're learning about yourself or unlearning almost?
Oh, I learn a lot about myself. One is
Please
like
don't.
the thing I know, right? The thing you talked about is like, sometimes I realized like when I face a roadblock, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna create an opportunity for me and for other people who look like me. So I really like take that opportunity and I take that stance with like, okay, how do I see opportunities? The well-being part is still a learning journey. It's still putting that into practice. I think the way I get into trouble because I can go and go and go, and I've always been a night owl. And I'm retraining my brain in
Same.
like, girl, you are not young like you used to be. You cannot pull those all-nighters like you used to. My husband is a good model. He goes to bed. He's like 9 o'clock. He's in, and I feel like I'm gonna be missing out on something if I go to bed at
Mhm.
9 o'clock.
No,
So that's
no,
the
it's like
piece.
12 at least?
So that's the piece I'm working, like getting into bed before midnight, like, and seeing it as a
Yeah,
good thing, like seeing it as health for my body. And it's like a daily practice I have to say to myself, like, you can go to bed, you can stop. There's tomorrow, right? So I
yeah,
get so excited and I love what I'm doing. And the thing about what being able to be a full-time entrepreneur is like I'm able to show up for my kids in a different way. So I often will
mm,
end my day earlier because I'm getting to pick them up from school and doing homework, although that's not necessarily joyful. Uh, but then it's like after well, I
that's
still
real.
have a couple things to do, and so once they right, so once I get going, it can be easy to keep going. So that's a reminder for myself, girl. There's tomorrow. You're the boss. You can stop,
Mm,
right? So those are the
yes,
self talk that I have to give myself.
yes. No, that's so important. Literally just talk like, I started my mornings off by just, like, talk to myself, like, as a child, like, "Okay, here's what we're gonna accomplish today. Here's what we're able to do, like, you are in control, like, do not let the day overwhelm you. You take it on yourself, and you do what you can." And that's really changed my whole mindset of how I get around, but I so appreciate you just hopping on this call and just, like, sharing your insight and your wisdom because so many of the people we serve are therapists, and a lot of them are in, like, their own private practice, and, like, I know this will be useful tools for them, as they, like, begin to grow and, like, just taking care of their well-being. But our whole season this year has been about joy and joy being a tool of resistance and how we embrace our joys, how we show up for ourselves and show up for our community. So I just want to learn a little bit more about how you've been embracing joy and like how you share that joy with yourself and with others.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always smiling. That's one thing that from a kid, like I always have a smile on my face. So that's the
Mhm.
thing. I'm a hugger, like love greeting people with joy. My family is big on surprises. So like
Oh,
if
I
if
love that.
anybody's gonna travel to see the other person, we're gonna like, don't tell this person. It's gonna be a surprise, right? We love like so there are ways in which we love to do that. My kids now love to play pranks, right? So we love to give a good joke and give feedback. If person's joke isn't quite working, right? So those are ways that in my family, we are we show joy. A lot of my workshops are about joy, reclaiming joy, Black joy. I love talking about Black joy as well. Um, I love holding space for people. So whether it's just a hangout, um, my family hosts my husband's Haitian, so every New Year's Day, we host a soup jumeau party where we bring people to enjoy Haitian soup, and just create just space for people to hang out. So I think those are some of the ways that like kind of the big ways that I think about joy. But in my day, like I've
Absolutely.
started a practice of I read the daily bread in the mornings. That's a way that I'm bringing more settle in my day. I love, watching TV. As a kid, I grew up watching TV, so that will always be a place. I love to read. I love to learn. I do a practice called Qigong yoga. So I do that. Being with my kids, they're always, as much stress as they cause sometimes, they always make me laugh. So I just tried those big moments, small moments. I love to travel. So I find taking care of myself, like, it's really like a radical practice of like caring for myself makes me feel joyful. When I do the things, when I go to bed, when I feel happy when I do that. It's like, girl, you went to bed at a certain time. Yeah. So, and I try to spread that to other people.
As someone who has felt your joy, I can tell you it's really working, and it's so appreciated. So yes, please keep that going. I love feeling your light and
Can
your
I say
warmth,
one
and
more?
it's like a great reminder. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll add one more. I love to bring color. So my outfits are often very joyful, very colorful. I wear a lot of
Ooh,
African attire. So I like when I dress, I'm like, I'm bringing the color in the space. So like my outfit is also usually joyful.
yes. Showing up. No, expression is such a beautiful way to just show your joy and, like, how we show up, and it's like you're just like this, like, bright piece of just, like, color in people's days. We love that. No, thank you so much for being on today and just sharing so much of your journey and so much of, like, how you've been just there to support people on their journeys for entrepreneurship. It's deeply appreciated. Um, Before we close out, how can people get in contact with you, support your work, get your book? Yes, let them know.
Yes. So if you're looking for a therapist, I know Loveland Foundation, you have a directory. We have a therapist of color directory. Innopsych is our Instagram and tend to be more active there. We're also on LinkedIn. And we love sharing. We do a lot of educational tidbits. Sometimes you'll catch me doing videos on there. I need to get better at that. And the book is available on Norton is the publisher. So I'm happy to share that code with you. But it's also on Amazon and Goodreads. And we have a lot of Black owned independent bookstores that are carrying the book as well. So we have a space on our website, innopsych.com/private practice, where you can find resources and where to find the book as well. But I'm very accessible. So please reach out, hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram, and happy to connect with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Charmaine. Truly such an honor to be with you in this space today. And yeah, I can't wait for you guys to dive into her book and just learn a little bit more. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a good day. Thank you all for joining us for a very special episode of The Unfolding, presented by the Loveland Foundation. At the Loveland Foundation, we are committed to showing up for communities of color in unique and powerful ways, with a particular focus on Black women and girls. Our resources and initiatives are collaborative, and they prioritize opportunity, access, validation, and healing. Since our founding, the Therapy Fund has provided financial support for therapy to over 13,000 Black women, girls, and non-binary individuals across the country. This year, our goal is to provide free therapy to at least 6,000 more. If you'd like to join us and invest in generational change, visit our website at thelovelandfoundation.org for ways to give. To stay updated on new episodes and any future programming, follow us on Instagram and Meta, or check out our website at thelovelandfoundation.org.